they're faded off, and the people are destroying them because they think that it's not Islamic. So the emotional connection for the ownership is also an important, and I think the economic benefit shall be given the second priority.
I will just one point. He has mentioned minority sites, we can say, and in this regard, Anglaj Mata Mandar in Laswela district. This is very famous archaeological site, and it is true, my colleague is true, that there is emotional disconnect.
Thank you, that's a good point. Please.
So, my name is Afzal Khan and I am Deputy Director Punjab Archaeology, and I've served in Lahore Fort for many years. So my experience in involving local community are totally different from all of the people who are discussing, because we have very bad experiences in Lahore Fort in Shalimar Garden. Madam Yasmin Lari was there for a few months. We have a very good relations, but now the people living immediately within the vicinity of the Shalimar Garden and Lahore Fort, they are totally against the department, because they thought that the department is against us and is doing such and such things, and they will destroy our houses, and they are not allowing us to build. So I suggest here that every country is doing something for a local community, but they are working in different angles and different ways and different procedures. So in that forum, UNESCO, with the help of the governments, they can develop guidelines to all the World Heritage Site centers, that they should develop one office or one room or one community center office or room where they involve all the community people. For example, in Lahore Fort or Shalimar Garden, people, very rich people are living around, very poor people, students, teachers, from all the religions, from all the political parties there. So when you involve one group, for example, he is from ruling party, the other person will against them. Anything you can do in a good way. So that we need to create the ownership of the people living around the monuments, that you are the owner of that monument now. So under the guidelines of UNESCO and the government, as we are following other guidelines in conservation and doing many things, all the conventions, so we should give a clear definition of community. The people who are living very close, this is community, or the person who has a love for the monument or for their heritage, and he lives 20 miles away from the monument. Who will work for that? So the like-minded people should come together, and they should do that, not everybody. And other thing, the benefits, for example, in Bangladesh, they develop very good pottery, but they don't have the place to sell it. So under those guidelines, every World Heritage Site, they should keep one shop for that, and they sell those things on that site and send to other countries also. And everywhere, we developed our site in Harappa, same thing. But after a few years, this was gone, because he says, okay, sir, I don't have a place to sell these objects. So this should also be patronized at some level, and proper guidelines should be issued to all the countries. To that, this is the definition of the community, and please involve all the persons. Yes.
The community center.
We need one umbrella, under one umbrella, we should go this way.
Okay.
So that's my point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good idea.
Can I speak for the second time?
Wait, can you wait a bit?
Yeah, please, why not?
Yes. I'm curious to hear about your thoughts, and okay, thank you.
I suppose the reason I inquired is that my position, I find, is a minority of one. this conference is about community participation in conservation of heritage. The first question which has been raised here very correctly and is at the heart of a lot of the problems that have been identified. And that question is, why do you want to conserve heritage? And I find that even the officially stated position, why, is for sustainable development. So, there is obviously and from all the remarks that have been made, time and again, you have come around to the same reason for conserving is income generation, GDP development, development. So the argument seems to be, the position generally seems to be, that the reason for conserving the heritage is to have sustainable development. Now, and what to conserve is my second minority position. Unlike most of you who are involved with conservation of tangible heritage, as a practicing practice architect, I have actually been involved with monuments and their conservation at its own level, but primarily my time and work and energy is to do with conserving the intangible heritage. So on both these counts, I find that my position is diametrically on a different pole from what the rest of the conference here. So maybe I should just keep my mouth shut. The first question of why do we want to conserve heritage? And this is a very key issue as an activist, citizen. We keep confronting this question of development and heritage. And there is a general prevailing attitude that, but development is necessary. And if some heritage has to be lost in the course, bad luck. There is a price to pay for development. It's the collateral damage, but develop we have to do. And this is, I find amazing that development, first of all, is not defined. What is it that you want to develop? And every time I ask this question, I sort of think, is this guy totally stupid? Doesn't he know what development is? It's economic development, stupid, don't you know? And this is what every government, politician, professional, architect, planner, economist, everyone maintains. What they mean by development is GDP growth, economic development. And what they mean by sustainable development is a non-stop economic growth. It's the economic growth which people want to be sustained. Not this ecology or this planet Earth, our environment, our values. It's the economy that has to be sustainable, on a sustainable growth path. So I have problems with both this notion of sustainable development. As I understand it, development is not a goal. You can't have a government policy that our 5th-year plan is to maintain a development of 6% per annum. 6% development of what? 6% economic growth is what they need. But what happens if you achieve that? Then more development. Is there a normative goal? Does this stop anywhere? Of course not. It is man's destiny to grow and progress and evolve and develop forever. That is the unique feature of mankind. That is the purpose why man is going to be the master of the universe. There's no end to it. Once we've done destroying planet Earth, there's still Mars, and then there are galaxies beyond. And these are serious scientists, thinkers who are saying these things. So, what they're really talking about is the development of these things. This is development. We're not talking about human development. Now, development, as I said, is not a goal. It is a process. It's a process of change. And if there's one thing that we should know something about, it's change. It is the only constant in the universe. Nothing sustains in any state forever. Everything is in a flux, a change. And that is what everyone has been seeing ever since man has been around. I mean, that's the only thing you see. So, and don't we know what is the nature of change? There is no change anywhere in the universe ever observed by anyone, anytime, that is a sustained change forever. That is not the nature of change. Why are we talking about sustainable development? Do you want to say something?
Yes. Thank you, Colonel Sir, for such a philosophical, enlightened discourse.
I'm sorry, by the way, I have a few other things to say, but you go.
No, yes, because what you have actually started the discussion, it is there. Anyway, but here the sustainability was just for a single similar aspect of conservation projects. So what here they meant out of this sustainability was not for the sustainable development of overall global human ambitious projects, but here it is, and yet it is only talking about the similar efforts which are being funded, being carried out in the field of conserving the heritage, which is mostly tangible and sometimes intangible, and how those efforts to sustain longer. Because if we are putting in some money in some project, and if it is one-time effort on my part or your part, or on any department's part, what will happen that if the project is not taken care of, involving the other aspects and actors within the design of the project, it might hamper all our efforts and desires to conserve and sustain that conservability of that particular heritage property. So here, by sustainability, they meant this. But thank you for giving us such an enlightened course, and we do agree with it. And I would rather like that we should applaud your position, and we register ourselves the position you have taken for this bigger and larger issue. So here the question is basically this similar aspect of things.
So, thank you very much. I take your point and I understand what you're saying, and to that extent, this is perfectly understandable. But the reason why I made those remarks is to explain my involvement with heritage conservation and the communities that I work with. First of all, just to finish the point I was making was that we don't want to conserve heritage in order to guarantee sustained economic growth. The heritage is the received wisdom, values, concepts that define the goals which we should aspire to. And it is in relation to our moving towards those goals or moving away from it that you can say we are developing or regressing. It has to be in relation to some goal. For me, the goal defined by all pre-modern humans is to become human, truly human, to achieve the highest human potential within each one of us. That has always been the goal, and it's against that that all traditional man has judged this person is a very developed individual, or these people are very developed in their humanity. So it's the heritage that provides us the roadmap, defines our goals for development. And if you lose the roadmap, you lost the script. So for me, it's those values and concepts that is the intangible heritage. And that is why in my practice I am involved with conserving that wisdom, tradition, values that sustained this planet and our humanity for millennia before modernism. So that is the kind of project that I am involved in, and a lot of our projects are for the community, initiated by the community, funded by the community, executed by the community. These are mainly Sufi shrines, tombs, and in the process we have actually learned so much and taught so many people so many skills. I won't go into examples, but believe me, and the enthusiasm with which the community has been involved and continues to be involved. It is not for economic gain. It is not for livelihood generation. It is not for the kinds of reasons that I find given here for conserving heritage. They do it because they identify with those values and the values that those saints stood for. So, and there's been no funding involved. Not even any governments involved in any of this. I can think of one particular project which was managed and owned by the Awqaf department, and there was external funding for it. And despite a huge community involvement, it ended up with a contestation for funds. But all of these other projects which we've been doing involve community, enthusiasm. They're done not for profit, not for generating incomes, and they are completely owned by the people who are doing it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Please wait, there is a queue going on. Yeah, you wanted to...
I just want to come to the point where we have started. I believe everybody on the same page that community should be involved for the sustainable development, and of course they have defined the sustainability and the development. I think now is the time to discuss how to involve community and what kind of a mechanism we should adopt that maximum community can be attracted and involved. My personal experience says that in Pakistan, I'm not sure about the rest of the world, that the media, electronic media, is the shortest and easy way in Pakistan to use for heritage awareness programs. Like if we start the community center built around the archaeological site or inviting school kids, in this way we are targeting a very limited part of the community, very few people, spending a lot of resources. But at the same time, if we do a short documentaries in regional languages for awareness programs, in this way we can attract millions of people. We can reach millions of people, we can be sensitized. The best example we can see in India, if somebody go to YouTube and see this, visit Rajasthan and all these places, they have wonderful short clips. So this was my suggestion, that we should talk about how to involve community. We have already identified the issues, problems, and we have discussed the issues. Now I think we should focus on how to do this, what should be the mechanism.
Thank you so much. Mr. Jawad, you wanted to say something?
Basically, what we want community or the stakeholders to understand about sustainable development. Development is not something that the per capita income of Pakistan touches $500,000 or the country becomes industrialized, while on the other hand you forget your values, your language, or your natural resources are decaying. You cannot sustain this development. Of course, the development which is generated with your values, your language, your natural resources intact. So that is, I think, the main point which we need to communicate to the community. Thank you.
Please.
In order to save time, I just will read from the note that I just made. What we term as heritage was produced and thrived before and outside the institutional framework, and was brought down by the introduction of institutionalized solutions to needs and problems, and yet we assume a position of finding a remedy within the very system that caused the demise of cultural and natural heritage. To conserve is to acknowledge the dying status of a heritage, whether the physical remains or of the very knowledge and the culture that made it possible. And this is the how, not the how or the what part. This is the why, what are the causes that we have to set the alarm of sustainability? First, we all agree that heritage, the cultural heritage, before this institutionalized system, is very important, is of high value, whether tangible, intangible, or natural. We all agree on that. While we are ourselves product of the very institutional system that brought down all that millennia-old, culture and heritage. And now we are setting the alarm of sustainability. It was not only sustainable, it was thriving. It gave us Taj Mahal, it gave us palaces in Europe. What caused this? Because this discontinuation of that transfer of knowledge, which is one of the UNESCO's concerns, that continuation has been brought down by the schools and the institutional solutions through the government and a centralized system. While, this is a huge paradox and a huge disconnect of the why part, and we try to find solution from within the very system that brought down that culture and tradition and even natural heritage. So I would agree with Sir Kamil Khan Mumtaz on this part, basically, and about the sustainability aspect and about the development aspect. Since we have the sustainable development goals as well, which is not just pertaining to any particular project, but the overall human development and the overall human sustainable society, including the natural resources. So this is of a very huge concern. Like, we need to think, I believe it's a cliche, but outside of the very box that we are trapped in.
Okay, yes, please.
Okay. Basically, when we look at sites, as I call it, I think we need to look beyond the sites. Again, our experience in the Aga Khan Development Network is, while Sugar Fort might be considered one project, it's actually not the project. The actual project is the villages around it, these people of 12,000 people. And that's the way we look at it. The Sugar Fort becomes an anchor point. And our policy, similarly, if you were to look at Lahore, at the walled city of Lahore, it's this bigger walled city of Lahore and the buffer zone around it that we're looking at. To give you both examples of how the process has worked, because you're looking at, as he said, the process, In the process, it's important to improve the quality of life of the people living around this heritage. And how do we go about doing that? And for the walled city. Once that project was underway, in fact, 80-90% of the project is about improving the municipal services, whether it's the water, the sanitation, the whatever, for all the residents living there. Only then we got into the actual restoration or the conservation of the Shahi Hammams or the Wazir Khan Mosque. These came later. So the how is, you got to benefit, the benefits have to be felt. There has to be a stake in what's happening. Only then will you go on to the next stage. So when we talk of a site, I would suggest please do not limit it to this, within this 200 feet, this is the site. No, it's much broader. And when you look at this broader picture, then things do work out. It's not just economics, it's a quality of life, it's an attitude, it's a pride, it's identity, it's hope, it's different levels that we're talking about. But whether we like it or not, at the end of the day, if you have an extra 100 rupees, all of us, or 1,000 rupees or $1,000, we'll all feel better a little bit, right? So we need to keep that in mind. But it has to be, what I'm trying to say is the context. It's bigger than the site. And you must approach that in that area development style. Only then will things work out. Again, not 100% successful, but at least the chances of success are so much greater. Thank you.
Thank you. So there are more comments? Two of you now.
I just want to second Sir Salman Beg. One thing, since I was in the field of his project, I would say, and it's an unbiased, objective comment, the success of AKDN is because in true spirit, it involves community. And the most complex issues, Dr. Lashari would agree, is like removing the commercial encroachments. Yeah. It creates a huge resistance, but yet we see a peaceful, successful removal of the entire market from the Wazir Khan Square. How was that possible?
Absolutely.
A peaceful, successful removal of encroachments around the Shahi Hammam. How was that possible? This is the how and the what part. AKDN is a great case study for us, how the government should also be working with the community, and also as Salman Saab said, the benefits are not just tangible in terms of brick and mortar or a beautiful site or a beautiful locality or paved streets. It's much larger than that. And we have seen that success in very diverse set of communities in an urban area in Lahore and in the mountainous region in the north.
Yeah, totally different setting. But if I may add, but this has been possible because of our partnership. A partnership with the government of Punjab in this case. The encroachments were removed by the government of Punjab, but they could only remove them once they saw those benefits coming through. Yeah? So you got to engage, you got to get that trust, you got to do some demonstration stuff, you got to provide those benefits, then you can go ahead and do it. Again, I suggest it's a long-term project, but you got to start somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, both of you. Thank you. Please, if you want to add something.
So, environment of like and dislike are internal politics of the communities, which create hurdles almost all times. There are some problems like there are different groups in the community, and one has one idea, other has other idea, so then it becomes very difficult. So there must be some legislation to streamline and to involve the community in a proper way.
I think engagement with the community, I mean that benefits should reach the community. That will work more than any legislation, as Salman Sahib mentioned. So we have to, as a whole, reach out to the community on long-term basis. What we normally do, we just initiate a process for a very short period. For instance, if the need of the community is to provide a drinking water, what we normally do, we just approve a drinking water scheme for a short-term basis. Then again we forget the community. So long-term engagement in all areas like education, as mentioned by Jawad, in drinking water supply, in health. So then I think community will totally own your all, projects, whether it pertains to heritage or it pertains to education. So I think this is the key.
But I think the community, they are non-professional people. And they have their love for their heritage, everything. But their involvement, there must be some control, not reckless. Otherwise, maybe there is a archaeological site and the community want to see it in a lush-push condition. So we can't do this. So there must be a level of involvement, and there must be some sustainable sources of earning. And for this purpose, there is a need to engage all classes of the society, like as Madam Lari explained, that she had trained some people for making traditional tiles and stone carvings. But her target was the economically lowest class of the community, which are maybe living in slums or almost nomads. But there are two other important classes, like middle class and upper class. They must be motivated because they will become as consumers in the long run. Suppose the patterns of the Makli graveyard, they can be printed on the clothes, they can be replicated in furniture, or they can be used for jewelry. So then it will become the market things, then it becomes selling, then it will be a sustainable source of income for the people.
Thank you so much. So in this point, we have no more time that much. We have to go to conclusion.
Okay.
And I will ask you to, are you ready with our conclusion of this session?
Yes.
Yes? Do you want to hear our conclusion? hold our
Yes,
seats.
it's depending on your group. I just want to say we will resume the program very soon. And Easter is coming.
Yes.
So, I mean, to listen our conclusion actually, because we will, when
Okay,
we
so-
have interest discussion and our groups will do the same.
In front of the minister.
Yes, yes, he would
Okay,
like
so
to
we
listen.
keep your conclusion to present in front of.
I will
So maybe colleagues and participants, the Honourable Minister is here, and we would like to just give him a flavour of the discussions today. So I'll ask the two working groups that have been meeting here this afternoon to briefly summarize their discussions for the past 1.5 hours. We had a full morning and early afternoon of presentation of case studies from Pakistan and from different countries, Bangladesh, Jordan, Oman, and Kathmandu this afternoon. And then we had some focused discussion questions. And I would like to give, I don't know who wants to go first. Anyone ready to give a...
There were two groups, right?
Yeah, just a brief presentation of your discussions in the group. Yes, please.
Thank you very much for giving us a chance to express the nutshell of the discussions we had here. The day was very fruitful and we listened to the presentations by various participants. And those actually set the targets for us, how to further broaden to the issue of very much the sustainability in the conservation efforts. And once we were split into the groups, we here were sitting among the national experts, and this was a very enlightening session where each of us did participate very openly and express the views and the experiences which were their personal experiences extended to a longer duration of their contribution into the field of conservation. And here there was few moments when we, all of us, did experience that we are gaining from the insight by one of our colleagues working in the similar field, but coming out with another viewpoint and from any other such angle, which is giving us more enlightenment in the issue. Basically here we were trying to understand the questions and issues related to the sustainability and to the conservation efforts which are required to be undertaken, and how that conservation efforts vis-a-vis the intangible and intangible heritage are sustainable and that can be prolonged further into the gains which are ensuring a continuous maintenance and preservation of our heritage sites and our heritage, which is maybe intangible also. So here, the first thing which we discussed was how we are going to define the groups which are the community. What possibly could be the community? How we are going to define the community? When we looked into the relationship between the site and between the people who are living within the site or around the site or on the larger periphery and directly and indirectly involved, emotionally involved, sometimes politically involved. So this engagement of the community with the site was a bigger issue. And then we, by and by, we actually went on to identify that how these communities can possibly be reacting then further. For example, there were certain communities we identified as the hostile community. Those communities which were not really looking up to that site as we are looking at that site, as the whole national system of thinking is looking at that site. So particularly, and then there was the sites where we found out the communities may be at the odds with the objectives and targets which we are pursuing or we are considering to be of value, but for them It is something which comes as a shock. And on the other hand, when we look at certain areas where we find that the communities take high pride to this particular site, so they tend to identify themselves with that particular site, and they are happily engaging themselves and trying to be closer and be of assistance to that site. So in a way, the final conclusion from here was that the community is particularly the area people who are presently involved with that particular position and site, that particular location. And this may not be limited to the site itself or surrounding it. It may be the peripheral. As we saw the examples of this time, few of the sites which worked very well when we went extended beyond the site and into the communities. So here the community means the people who are associated with the site and can be identified, recognized as attached to the site and could possibly be the beneficiaries. So, and they can possibly contribute towards the good ends, or maybe they can otherwise going to harm the area. So the community basically is that extended position which may not be considered limited only to the site. The second thing which we went into discussion was how possibly to involve and engage the communities within that work. And there was this long debate which was carried out whether the considered goals and aims and objectives which we see as the desires, are they sufficient enough to motivate the community to get involved? And is that only sufficient that we should say that the heritage should be saved and safeguarded, so the community will automatically come and be with us and be our strength? So this was not considered not the basic motivating point. So here the group was of the view that if we are involved in the soft means and measures, we are able to get more emotional engagement and involvement. There is the women, there are the children, there is the softer groups within the community that can be the motivating factors, and we should look into it. The other thing was that if we are engaging the community and if we are going to an area and we are thinking of a sort of conserving and preserving that particular site or heritage or intangible value system, so there is need that we should not think of some short-term engagement. It is not possible. If we have to think of being meaningful and try to make differences, then it is essential that we are having this mind that we have to be present there for a longer duration. We should also not think that we are only going to conserve the site, but we should also think that we are going to help the community to come up better. We are going to have this idea that we are going to make their civic amenities better and better. We are trying to, and we should aim at raising the level of the quality of their lives. If we are going with this idea, then this type of engagement is sustainable, and it will actually help the community look at the thing, identify it as something which is actually helping them improve their quality of life. And then there was this economic side of the whole issue. How to make it further sustainable, because if the benefit, the economic benefits of accruing to the community, that community will be happily moved and get involved and go further with that particular idea of conserving and preserving this whole system of which the society at large approves. So I was really quite involved, fully engaged by the group, and was enlightened and educated at the end that when we thought that we should be thinking of those objectives to achieve, and in this way there was that if we are involving and initiating certain economic activities, the similarly, which are associated directly with the heritage itself, that is going to be very beneficial, as we have the example from Bangladesh, where the simple potters were motivated, utilized, and then they come up with the productions. And then there was a mechanism which was beyond those community levels, but it was incorporated within the project design, and it came from outside. It was the engagement of the department to sort of make this a commercial way. Within the exhibitions, there was some earning. If you have the gift shops developed within the area around it, this sort of environment, going market, the material produced by the people have to be marketed. It has to have a channelized system of getting to the customers. So this sort of engagement beyond the community is essential. So this is going to be a sort of arrangement which will help the communities to realize their